Wonder about the future and how you'll be working and learning? Welcome to You in 2042, the future of work, with your host, Danielle Wallace.
Welcome to another edition of You in 2042, the future of work. Joining me today is Kevin.
Right. My name is Kevin Mulcahy, and I'm the co-author of a book called The Future Workplace Experience that details trends that are reshaping the future of learning and working.
I recommend everybody to go check out the book. Where can we find it at?
You can find it at Amazon and all the online booksellers, and it's readily available.
We'll put the contact details for that in the show notes. So in thinking of that future workplace, how do you envision the future work space and workplace? What do you see maybe coming there in that way?
I think you're asking gently about this emerging conversation about flexible and hybrid work. And what we have to get back to with workplace and space is, what is the activity that is taking place by the employee? It's not a question of showing up or not showing up, or show up X amount of days or not show up X amount of days. Space should support the work that's to be done, right? There's a different space that we go to when we need quiet, productive work versus co-creation work versus recharging. I work out of a co-working space myself, and there's a recharge room at that space where the rule is you're not to bring documents into it. The culture of the room is it's a room that you go into, turn off the lights, close your eyes, and just recharge if you need to during the day. And more workplaces are offering recharge space. And then there's energy generating space. You see that in gyms, corporate gyms, or access to gyms and exercise facilities are part of supporting and endorsing the health of employees. So space isn't space. And we have to look at what is the work that is to be done. And the question to ask an employee, or the conversation to have with an employee, is, for this task, where is it that you do your best work? And ask that question and believe the response. And that has fueled, in many workplaces, a variety of workspaces that are appropriate for different styles and types of work.
So within this future world of work, which probably is very imminent, if not right now, the whole intent is that the workspace itself is really dependent on the work that some people say is they do best in that environment. But we hear so many mixed messages, though, about what workers are asking for, and it becomes hard to know what's true. And I know you've done a lot of data on this, though. So what do you think is important to workers? What are they saying as their imperative?
I think they value flexibility. It's when I come to the office and I'm looking for what are the choices for me to get my work done? And what choices does my employer offer me in terms of the space, the technology, the environment to get that work done and for me to shine and do my best work? And again, it goes back to asking and believing, where and how do you do your best work? How much time, and with whom do you do your best work? And as managers, coordinating to have the people who do connected and engaged work together to be together when that's appropriate, and not be together when it doesn't need to be appropriate. And some of the tools that we saw show up in the pandemic, for example, Slack, etc., really changed the nature of the hierarchy of communications, or you have Microsoft Viva as another one, that have changed how workers are communicating and getting work done while remote from each other. And this conversation about hybrid work cannot be divorced from the new technologies and practices and behaviors that employees are now using to get that work done. And sometimes our workspace is actually a digital meeting room and a digital whiteboard and a digital workspace and not a physical workspace.
So the role of technology then seems really intertwined with the future workspace?
Yes, I think technology can enable and accelerate certain behaviors and practices and demarcations. I'm surprised at how many WhatsApp groups, for example, that I've now been invited to do serious work as a proxy for we're organizing a conversation around this project. Or when I've talked to other people about Slack channels, there's a Slack channel for every topic, for every meeting, for every subject. And people are optimizing how they hold their conversations and organizing and democratize the conversation about a topic. And the amount of conversation that seems to be taking place digitally that is replacing conversations around the table has led to two issues. One, there's more communication, there's more information when conversation happens digitally. However, what I do see is it makes decision-making complexity more exponential. People haven't yet come to terms with how they want to make good decisions in an electronic format. And that's part of when you're around the table, there's a nuance to coming to a consensus and making a decision that I believe is being lost in the online conversations. So I think the best proxy is, look, let's discuss this online, read what's posted, but come and let's meet in person to make our decision and draw our conclusions. So we're not in typing wars or trying to persuade each other's opinions by our keystrokes. And I think that's a nice blend, is separate the purpose of the communication channels.
That's very practical takeaway. It's the intent of separating the communication channels, but in particular, being able to share what you're saying is actually more information with digitally, which is an insight I had not thought of, but then divorce that from the actual decision making. And when you say meet in person, that could be virtual, or that could be, is that like physically in person to make those decisions?
Let's call it, let's meet synchronously.
Yeah.
And I think we need to get away from the in-person versus virtually. We're either meeting synchronously, where I can either see and hear you real time, or we're meeting asynchronously, where we're posting and responding and reacting. And let's just call it, let's frame it that way. And then we can be a bit more productive in our how we organize our work. And I will go back to, there is one trend which still has not caught up with our modern meetings. And this is a peeve of mine. It's the idea of a pre-meeting agenda. If you're going to get people together digitally or synchronously, wherever they may be, whether they're in person or they're remote, have an agenda, lay out the why are we having this meeting? What is the purpose of this meeting? What is the outcome of this meeting? What are the elements that we'll discuss in this meeting? And the sooner we get to this skill of crafting meeting agendas, the fewer conversations will be had about whether meetings were a waste of time or not. Every meeting, whether synchronously or asynchronous, can be very productive if there's a solid agenda there. And let's go back to those practices.
That's another great practical outcome that all of us can apply now within our workplaces and workspaces to ensure that there's a clear purpose, the outcomes desired from the meeting and the agenda.
Yeah.
I'm a big fan.
And I challenge the listeners to just track a day in your meeting life, like next week. Track your meetings and track how many meetings were you invited to that you received no agenda and no pre-reading versus the meetings that you received an agenda to. And the results may shock you.
That's a great call to action. I will embrace that challenge. I love that. And this all really helps us support our better digital conversations and hybrid workspaces, workplaces now, and sets us up well for the future. I see from what you're saying that these become the table stakes of our communications by being able to optimize how we hold conversations, how we can democratize that information, ensuring that it's supported with the technology and the in-person spaces to allow people to recharge, to collaborate, to have focus time. This all comes together in this clear path we can get there for the future of work.
Yeah, there is one time where I think the highest impact of getting together is for one meeting, and that is to celebrate. Celebrating in person is just a tremendous experience for all attendees. And there's just nothing lamer, I think, than a round of applause or a toast over a Zoom call or a Teams call. It just doesn't convey the sense of shared achievement and genuine showing up for someone or to celebrate an accomplishment. And that's a great reason to bring people together, is to highlight accomplishments on the team, to celebrate someone who has done something extraordinary, and to just reflect back on why we gather. I mean, we gather for life events, we gather for births and christenings and weddings, depending on your culture and your religion, but we gather to celebrate. But we seem to have forgotten how to do that in our workplaces.
So true. I think we can also embrace that practical approach of celebrating in person, and it ties well to the flexibility you mentioned that employees are deserving and wanting. And most people actually like the celebration aspect of it. And that gives a good purpose for that.
Yeah. And while we're on the domain of practical tips for getting together in person, the second best use of getting together with people in person is to thank them. There is nothing more powerful in the office environment than an in-person thank you. A genuine, let me shake your hand, let me meet you in the eye and say thank you.
That's a good point. And it adds to the formality of it or the genuineness of it because it's real.
It's a connection moment. And so let's celebrate more in person. Let's gather together and thank each other more in person. And that those feel-good endorphins of celebrating and thanking people will just help people feel a lot better about getting together in person with you, because they suspect they're likely to be thanked or celebrated or something else. But I'm no longer dreading some of these in-person meetings if I'm walking away with very positive feelings from the last time I got together in person.
I'd love to pick up on that theme and go a bit deeper, perhaps in our next podcast, when we speak about those aspects which are delving into culture, maybe a culture of belonging to things and celebrations. Kevin, thank you so much for the great insights today and these practical tips that we can apply now that also give us great insights. Thank you.
Look forward to joining you. Thank you.